series America is Business and We Are the Price to Pay, Part 3. Basic human needs are not business opportunities. When survival is for sale, humanity pays the price. The United States government is reporting that the economy is good. Our nation's gross domestic products are expanding, stock markets are up, and profits are skyrocketing. There is low unemployment being reported, and wages are on the rise. So the government expresses confusion about why it is that a significant majority of Americans continue to report that the economy is in poor condition. That's because the US government's economic indicators are tailored to reflect the financial state of the wealthy minority. This picture of the economy does not factor in the realities of the majority of Americans. Most Americans, even with an increase in wages, are still not able to afford basic needs. When an increase in wages can't even cover the increased annual cost in health insurance, it's not a raise, it's a pay cut. When full-time work can't support a family, that's not personal failure, it's policy. People are shamed for asking for fair wages, while corporations are rewarded for taking public money. And it doesn't stop there. We have built a machine that converts human suffering into profit-making. Approximately 2 in 5 Americans, that's 40% of us, are expected to develop cancer in our lifetime. So on that, how are you guys doing? What's got you up? What's got you down? Rachel?
Oh, well, let's see. What's got me up is I am in the second part of my program, in my coaching program, and I love it. And I'm meeting great people in my cohort, and I'm learning so many different modalities and styles of coaching. And I've been coaching for the last 5 years, but it's really nice to legitimize the work that I'm doing and to meet people from all over the world. My cohort is international, and it's really cool. It just reminds me of why people are so impactful and important, and why in that important in getting to know each other so we can be exposed to different cultures and stuff like this. And I love it. So that's got me up. What's got me down? Well, you know, as mentioned items that you just laid out for us, Julie. But also, I wouldn't say down. I am being in California. I have great concern over the government, the governor election. So I wouldn't say down. I would say side eye,
Mhm.
leery, little inspired and hopeful, little nervous. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? What about you, Julie?
Um, I guess I would say what's got me down is just the everyday stressors. I think that's very common. I think a lot of us just feel like we're really just trying to keep it all together, and it's hard when life is already hard, and then you've got wars happening and midterms coming up that are pretty pivotal and all kinds of stuff, you know. But what's got me up is when I just stop and center myself and I go, be grateful for what you have. Um, in the blink of an eye, anything can happen. So just I hug my daughters a little closer and try to spend a little bit more silly time with them. Just doing nothing, right? The Seinfeld approach to parenting, sometimes just
Yeah.
doing nothing. How about you, Robin?
Oh boy. What's got me up? Well, I just had a visit from my mother. I like to call her my mother in love. She came and stayed for a few days,
Mhm.
so that was really nice. And letting the kids see her because we live on different coasts, so they get to see their grandmas at least once a year. And sometimes I feel bittersweet about that because I got full access to my grandparents, but also I'm not trying to leave California. So I just need to make enough money so I can just fly back and forth whenever I want to. I feel like that's a great way to solve it. But that was really
Mhm.
nice and
That's it.
restoring. And what's got me down? I mean, pick one. You know what I mean? I think I'm gonna take a page out of you guys' books. I'm not necessarily focusing on what's got me down, because I think it's so easy as soon as you open up your phone or turn on the TV to just get pulled into that energy. And especially as moms, as parents, as people who are responsible for other human beings, we have to level ourselves. So I'm trying to just stay present. I got my nose pierced. I've been wanting to get my nose pierced since I was like, I don't even know how long. And I was just like, you know what?
Very
Life is
cute.
for living. So I did it. And it's been interesting. It's been interesting. But so that's about it.
Yay.
Love it.
I love that.
Robin,
Thank you.
seizing the moment.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to get into this, our part 3. Most Americans do not have even $1,000 to cover an emergency, and fundamental costs have increased so much that the majority of American households have 2 incomes just in order to afford basic expenses. Approximately 30% of single parents live in poverty, and even with the 2-person income, things like long-term savings, vacations, and time to build dreams are unobtainable for most of us. The American workers' wages have not and are not keeping pace with the growing profits of large corporations. This system has created billionaires who can purchase our elected officials and weaponize the judicial system by suing people into submission in court. And as business profits grow, the frontline workers who are essential to the business growth are treated as expendable and ungrateful for asking for livable wages. While on the other hand, corporations are praised for using that money to increase profit lines and stock values, which most benefits the wealthiest, rather than paying their workers more. And in turn, the wealthy are hailed for being smart for finding ways around paying taxes. It is very one-sided. In addition to that, basic human needs that should be developed around best practices have become profit-focused at the expense of our health and livelihood. What are some ways that current corporations have unloaded their cost of doing business onto you, your family, and others in your community? So we're going to start by talking about housing. What is going on with housing costs and how does it affect you?
I mean, we live in California. I think it's
Yeah.
no secret. There's no secret that people always say, kind of like, I live in California. Yes, you have to choose your level of poor or destitute. Like you have to choose your hard. I'll say it that way. You have to choose your hard. So some people may feel like, I don't know if I'll ever get to own a home and get a part of that American dream living in Los Angeles, but there's an exchange that you are willing to take. But it shouldn't be that way. Like, we should be able to live in one of the
Right.
most beautiful states in this country and be able to buy a home and it not be like, I'll feel so unattainable. And there's really not enough conversation or action being done to clean it up, to make that change that we need, because it is something universally we all deserve to have. And the way things are looking right now, it just looks like there is no end in sight. There's no relief. The pressure valve is not being released. And so, it causes people to make rash decisions, because it's, do I pay my rent? Do I feed myself? Do I move out of state? Like it's constant. It's like the consistent fear is just unimaginable.
Mm-hmm.
It's outrageous. We moved here from Brooklyn and we're not saving. It's not a great savings. When we moved here from Brooklyn, I thought we were like, okay, so we're gonna save some money. But you get more. You get more we got more in our apartment building, right? More space. We have I don't have to like put my laundry in the wheelie cart and go down to the laundromat. But it's not a great savings. Los Angeles is outrageous. And we definitely are not living in a space that we would want to live in. It would be nice to have extra space. We don't have extra space. It would be nice. And we actually had this in our head that we were going to have extra space, but we don't. And I agree. It doesn't feel like there's an end in sight. There used to be a politician in New York. I forgot his name, but he ran on this whole entire thing. It was, the rent is too damn high. And that was like his one platform. and it is like copy and like paste over here because it's just too damn high. Like and I'm like I go over and like meet with people. I'm like, how did you get your house? When most people are telling me that they got their house like 15 years ago, they inherited it. It was, there was all it was no one is like, oh, I recently did this thing. And it's uncomfortable, and when you start thinking about generational wealth, it feels so unobtainable for me here. Um, and yeah, we are able to afford to buy a condo in other countries, but we are unable to afford to buy a condo in the city in which we live. And I find that extremely curious and outrageous.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm from Michigan, and so even when we lived in government housing, we had lots of green space to run around in, right? And then when we had a house, we had a nice yard, and I just so want that for my kids. I mean, even just for the health of it, because of, digging
Yeah.
in dirt, it's got its own probiotics. It's really good for them. I really would like to have that, but it feels like here, like you said, people either bought their houses during the mortgage collapse, or they inherited some funds, or they were able to sell something they had from a while back to help purchase another one. But a lot of people I know too are like house poor. So
Hmm.
they've traded whatever they can to have that, but then they have to work so hard they don't get to spend their time doing the things they love or with their kids as much as they would like, but they're able to give that then to their kids. So, it's a decision that's difficult, but they were able to make that. We couldn't even make that if we wanted to. Um, I want to ask you guys, I've heard people say things to me where they say, well, it's just all about the environmental red paperwork, like that all these builders have to go through. And from my perspective, that is just an excuse that I think a lot of builders are feeding. And again, this is commentary, we're not the news, so this is, we're giving our opinions in here, but feeding to the public to like blame it on the the environmental protections. I don't see that. When I see a house that's for sale, it gets purchased right away by a corporation. They tear it down. It's an adorable house. It's still super expensive. It was probably like a $1 or $2 million house. They build up what we call McMansions here. I don't know if they call them that everywhere else. A massive house that they then sell for like 3 to 5 million. I don't know who's buying these houses. They have like 6 bedrooms, no yard. They like take up the whole yard. Or what I've seen is like in our apartment building, when there was a dip in the economy, there were apartments that went empty for up to 2 years. Rather than them reducing the rent, it was easier for them just to keep some of them open, right? And then you see apartment buildings getting built all the time, but they are so expensive. There's never any room made for mixed income or affordable income. It's not that there's a lack of building. There's building going on everywhere. Do you see this as well?
Yeah.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. I used to like to live at the newer apartments, like equity apartments. And I remember
Hmm.
I lived in one in Georgia, and I moved to one here. And it was like the first year you live there, they're like, well, the rent is like slashed by, I don't know, $300 for the whole year if you sign with us, and blah blah blah. And then you get like a notice saying that they want to increase your rent by like $800, and you're like, what, huh? I mean, it's actually kind of unbelievable and egregious what they expect people to just turn around and have. But I think also it goes back to the conversation of, if we were to level the playing field, the thing is, some people want to feel the elitism of it. Some people want to feel, I mean, like, listen, I love a good bougie moment. I love not to the expense of someone else, but I love feeling just a little rich, just a little luxury in my life. I get
Hmm.
it. But some things just don't make sense. It just doesn't. And the propaganda of America has gotten people so normalized to the fact that, oh, just work 3 jobs. You're just not working hard enough. Who needs to sleep? Who needs to have fun
Mm-hmm.
time? It's just, I'm glad that the structures are starting to show the cracks, because it's just it's ridiculous that we think we have to work ourselves to the bone in order to have the nice things, unless you're fortunate enough to live, to work in a economy, I mean, in an industry where you get paid very well. Most of us don't, and we know that everything gets pricier, but the pay stays the same.
But that
Yeah.
comes at a price too, because I'm a career coach and I work for a large HR company, and so and I work in outplacements, and so the turnover that I see is people getting laid off, right? So I work on that team, and the high earning income clients that I have are burnt out. Right now they have to, there's this moment there where it's like, okay, I've bought into this. I have the things, I have the house, I have the kids, or I don't have the kids, but I have equity and I have to maintain that. And the maintenance, just the sure, when life happens and there is a shift, you have to be able to address that shift, and hopefully with clarity and not panic. And most of the time I see panic. And the panic is, how am I going to afford the mortgage? Or my house is paid off, but now I've invested in all these other things. And the buy-in is incredibly stressful to maintain if something goes south with your high earning job. Now you have this lifestyle, and I see it, and it is very difficult to navigate, especially when you are, I would say, like in the 45 range or so, right? Because already some of my clients are feeling like, what have I done? I am so stressed out to maintain this life. I don't want it anymore. But now there's like people are relying on them, and there's this whole entire system that they have bought into, that is now they've become so invested in it. It's very hard to break away, and that causes a huge shift in mental health.
It has, and I think that's why people are waiting to have kids. And also, what you were saying is, I feel like all of us feel like we're one cancer diagnosis or serious diagnosis away from being homeless or unhoused. And we aren't going to be able to touch on all the unhoused stuff, but we've talked about it and we know how important this is. We're really just skimming the surface on some of these things because they all need to be dove into deeper, but the unhoused issue is very serious all throughout the United States. And a lot of times we talk about women and children, but men matter too. And there's, any of these people that are in a place where they need the care and love and support of us can get it. It's just not being done. So in that vein, let's talk about like what are some of the ways that protecting corporation profits have come before the basic human needs and food and water quality. How are you guys seeing that in your own lives?
You want to go, Rachel?
I mean, I see it I see it in food. Like that's something where I see huge connection between profiting and having shitty ass food, chemically laden, nasty ass shit that we're feeding people that then you're ingesting, and then it's manifesting, coming out in a lot of diagnoses. And I've seen it. I have actually seen it. And I've had friends that the doctor was like, oh, make sure you don't eat this type. Make sure you don't eat foods with dyes, or make sure you don't eat foods with hormones. Well, why the fuck does it exist on our food supply anyways if it's making people sick, right? But it's easier, it's cheaper to have, it's easier to do for the company. And I mean, if you just look at all of our regulations, like what is acceptable in Europe is a completely like not our practice. And what, like, some of the things you can't even sell the shit in Europe or Japan from America. They're like, no thank you, we don't want it, it's toxic. But yet we still continue to do it. And that in my opinion, that really does keep money and generating back into the pockets of these large corporations. The food industry, I really see it, and how it's directly connected to a lot of cancer diagnosis or like related to, right, a lot of these afflictions.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, and I was gonna say also, I don't know about y'all,
how
but
about you?
So like
Sorry.
one day we were just mentioning AI, and it was a little chat GPT here and a little autocorrect there. And now it's like they shove it down our throat. It's like I can't pull up an app without them giving an AI suggestion or a summary. And it's just like, we don't want it. You know, knowing how much damage it is doing to communities, like the amount of water that's being utilized to power it. Of course, when it comes to robotics and AI, there's always the good and the bad, right? I'm not, it just feels like y'all can't take all this money with you, and y'all are willing to sacrifice millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people, so that you can be richer. What do you expect to be like buried in a tomb like in Egypt? I don't understand. How much money do you need to sleep well at night? And so I think that seeing that this surge of AI and almost like it being forced upon us when it's doing so much damage, I'm fearful of what that means for our future, for our children's future. You're just seeing just take, you know. And also, I'm a person who's very sensitive to the environment. And so I don't understand how people don't realize like this earth is keeping us alive. I feel like I'm watching an episode of Captain Planet and all the villains are doing all the bad things and nobody's stopping it. So yeah, I would say AI for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
What about you?
and there's so many. I mean, I hadn't heard about Superfund sites until I actually read Aaron Brockovich's book, Superman's Not Coming. But there are, so a Superfund site is a contaminated location in the United States that poses a significant risk to human health and environment due to hazardous waste that came from corporations like these AI facilities you're talking about contaminating, you're talking about wasting the water, right? They're also contaminating the water from abandoned mines, manufacturing facilities, nuclear disasters, and contamination. And these are only the ones that were labeled that and are overseen by the EPA, but there's over 1,000 of them in the United States. And these are the national priorities list of the Superfund sites. There are also some that have just never even been deemed a Superfund site. Like we have, and most of them, I want to say, are in lower income, Black, and Indigenous American communities, right? But we have one right here near us in Simi Valley. Have you guys heard of that? The Santa Susana Field Laboratory?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And there were parents who, first they tried to hide it, right? They tried to hide
Yeah.
it. It was one of the worst nuclear disasters. Nuclear power is not clean, everybody. Let's just be clear about that. There's a lot of waste and contamination. And these kids are dying from cancers. We're just talking about people's babies. There's also all kinds of rare forms of brain and breast cancer, all this stuff happening there. They've been fighting and they were required to clean it up to ground zero, never did, had secret meetings with DTSC. And now they're saying, oh, they're kind of marketing that they're going to clean it up this summer. They instead negotiated that they only have to clean up 5% of it. So they're going to leave 95% of it there, which, just to be clear, in Boeing's, you know, Boeing, how much they care about people. In their own materials, it says that 96 out of 100 people would get cancer if they lived on site and ate produce that grew there. 96 out of 100 people. But they have negotiated to clean up only 95% of the contamination. You know what they're probably going to do after this? They're going to open it up to the public as parks, or they're going to give it back to the indigenous community, which of course it originally was. It belonged to them. And they're going to try to hail it as this like positive marketing campaign when it's nothing different than the kind of shit that they've done to the indigenous people since the time they came here. Right? And,
So
and
gross.
these sites are all over the United States. Why aren't they responsible for their cleanup?
Because they don't have to be.
They don't have to be.
Yeah, I think anytime you can just turn and be like, that's not my problem. Like that always comes back to like the whole theme of how we got into these topics about accountability.
Yeah.
When people are not held accountable, they don't have to feel the pressure. They just want to turn away from the effects. That's not me. We see it every day in the news. That's not me. That's not, I didn't do it. I wasn't directly responsible, but if you're benefiting from it and you know you're benefiting from it, especially financially, how do you sleep at night? I'm sure we all, in some way, by some degrees, have had some touch with something that we probably don't approve of, whether we realized it or not. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who directly know they are just pocketing and pocketing and pocketing. To what end? Like, it's the accountability is like the one. If I could just pick one thing that has to change in this world, it has to be holding people accountable. It makes a difference. It's not okay. It's not okay.
Yeah, it's the lack of yeah, it's the lack of accountability, and then everything is the capitulation that follows suit. It's like no one's accountable, and then it's like, well, it's okay, it's all right, it's just one side area, and it's not. Is that really even Los Angeles? There's not a lot of people over there, anyways, and it's fine, and it is. But the lack of accountability has also got us into like a sort of a pickle when it comes to our historical context and what people want to talk about in our when it comes to the Black American story in America, right? Like I'm uncomfortable, or I didn't do it, it wasn't me that did that thing, so
Right.
I don't want to talk about it because it makes me feel uncomfortable.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, well, how are we going to
Hold on.
learn?
Oh, Rachel, you brought it. You woke up something in me. I saw this clip on social media, and I don't know if I shared it, but this person, was it? I can't remember who it was, but they were interviewing somebody. I want to say it was Mehdi Hassan from Zateo, but he was interviewing
Mhm.
somebody, and he was like, when it comes to slavery and all of those things, you say you don't. That's not your problem. I didn't do it. I shouldn't be held responsible. Whatever. And he agreed, and he was like, but when it comes to like the pride of America, you want to take all the credit. You want the glory. It was I'm probably misquoting him, but basically he's like, you want to take credit for the things that make you feel proud, but you want nothing to do with the things that your ancestors were responsible for that caused pain and destruction. And I think we all have some, like I said before, I think we have all some sense of reckoning. And I'm sure in life there's certain systems you just can't escape. No matter how hard you try, some way, somehow, you're going to get garbled up in some form of the machine. But I don't know. I just think there's a certain awareness that you just can't say, "Oh, I just didn't know." I didn't know. I didn't know.
Right.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. It's just. It's. I don't know the words to explain that.
Yeah, I feel like it's like what Isabel Wilkerson says in her book Cast, that we may not have built this house, but we all live in it. And we're all responsible for caring for it. And that includes the earth too. Like when you have things like PFOs that are raining in the rainforest, people there don't have water filters to protect their children. And we don't even know the long-term negative effects of having to use water filters rather than the natural minerals from clean water. But we will put links to this stuff in our page.
Yeah.
We'll put links to the EPA Superfund site so you can go in and see if you have one near you. And we'll also put a link to the Environmental Working Group's water database system. They partnered with Aaron Brockovich, and they tested a bunch of waters, and you can see what's in your water, because that is very important. And that leads us directly to the next thing. So then how does all of this translate and correlate to the affordability of healthcare for the average American? So how is this lack of accountability and rather shifting the accountability of those who are gaining the profits onto the shoulders of families and children, affecting us in health and the healthcare system? So Robin, you wanna share?
I mean, I think the hardest thing to see is when you hear these stories about, I read recently, it was like a dad who was denied care. He was suffering from cancer, and they deemed it not not important, not crucial. And I don't want to get into the Luigi Mangione of it all, but I do think that we all share a similar frustration, because it feels like you almost feel like you've paid into this bucket, but when it comes time to get back what you feel you deserve for what you paid in, for a lot of people, it just seems like they're always coming up short, and there's always an excuse and there's always a reason, to the extent that you have doctors complaining about what can get approved and what cannot get approved, or you have doctors who create a private practice to go around healthcare because it seems more feasible to get what you need versus going through this system that's supposed to be it's supposed to be in place to make sure that when we're sick, we're taken care of. And to see these companies get these, we'll just call it what it is, welfare checks, right? Because those are the real welfare queens. To see them get those welfare checks in some kind of way, it still doesn't trickle down to the people who help fund. We are responsible for the millions, billions of dollars that you have. And it takes a few people behind a computer to say yes, no, yes, no. It is it's hard to wrap your mind around. And again, it is another situation in America where we've been sold this idea, this is the best place to be. This is where you want to be. I mean, it's the like literal manifestation of a snake oil salesman. And now when people really pull back, or where people really are under duress and they really, really need that help, why do people have so many GoFundMe's for situations like that to help
Right.
carry them through? Because the system that's supposed to be there is not available to most people when they really, really need it. And it's kind of unconscionable. What about you? What do you guys think about it?
I mean, I've always said, and people get this guy that actually ruffles feathers. I lived in Europe for 6 years, and the best healthcare I had was when I lived in France.
Mm.
And yes, okay, yes, I was working, and yes, the taxes are high, but the payoff is you walk away with $0 bill or €0 bills for basic health services. No, I was not put on a wait list because I needed a heavy, like a serious surgery. So there's that argument comes to me all the time. Well, you didn't have to have a major surgery, so you would have died waiting. Well, when I lived there, I didn't see it. I mean, do you want to talk about waiting for services? Hello, have you looked around? Where are we in America? People die all the time waiting for fucking services. When I was in France for the 6 years, talked to a lot of people. I was in a teaching position, had French staff. No one was like, "Oh, my so and so died waiting for service." I never heard that one time. Not one time did I hear that. But I've read and seen that here. And what is the most unfortunate is, well, I guess maybe we're fortunate because we are in California and we are just south of our neighbors in Mexico. I have two friends who are independent contractors. They work in the creative arts. They cannot afford insurance. So they get the very bare minimum insurance that they can afford per month. And then they have basic health services that they drive across the border to. They got doctors in TJ, and they go there for, their yearly dental, their annual, gynecological visits. That's where they go. And so they no longer, and I've been doing that for years. They no longer use the American system because it's broken. It doesn't work. It's not affordable. Not everybody can do it. And even in California, where we have some liberties in areas of our healthcare, it's still not good. It's broken. Every time my partner pays our healthcare bill, I mean, I can imagine how much is paid per month for a family of three is outrageous. We definitely could use that money, and it would actually make a difference in our lives. But no, we have to pay all this money for healthcare it's broken. It's bad.
In case you need a surgery, that's really the only, right? And I can speak
Something
to
extreme,
that.
yeah.
I had to advocate for myself. So I had surgery last spring. Had to have this surgery. And it was, if I didn't have it, I was going to end up with broken bones, early onset dementia, eyesight loss, all kinds of issues. But it took me 4 years of advocating for myself. It takes forever to get into a doctor's appointment. I want to be clear, I have really good private insurance. I have some of the best of my friends that we have. But still, if I'm sick that day, I'm not going to be able to see my doctor. Sometimes I'm not even able to see any doctor, so I have to go to the local urgent care. But so I had to advocate, and you're just premenopausal, you're just getting older. But I knew in my gut, and I was having pains that I didn't want to leave my girls behind. So I fought for it, and I finally found a really good doctor who figured out what it was, and it was environmentally caused, most likely. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint it because there's like a soup of 35,000 different synthetic chemicals out there that have never been tested, and all of those combinations, it would be almost impossible to test them all. But most likely what was happening, because my immune system was basically attacking my cerebellum and my thyroid. And so I knew I needed to see an endocrinologist, and I made an appointment. 6 months I had to wait to see them. A week before they canceled, and I forget the reason why. I think she was moving. So I had to make another appointment. I had to wait another 6 months. I had to wait 6 months. By the time I saw them, they were like, oh my gosh, we're going to get you into surgery. You definitely have this. I'm glad you caught it early because the tumor isn't so big. I said early. It took me 4 years to figure out. And that was
Right.
self-advocating and with really good insurance. So I when I tell that story to people, usually the first thing they say is, "Oh, well, that's because you had what are they Medicare or Medi-Cal." I'm like, "No. I have friends that have Medi-Cal and they get just as good treatment as
Yeah.
I get."
Mm-hmm.
So sorry, that was a little bit of a ramble. It bothers me when people think that the sludge in our insurance is somehow better than the sludge in the insurance in Europe. It's a different sludge. Their sludge is to kind of slow things down so they can afford it for everybody. Our sludge here is to make sure that profits stay at a
And
certain level.
I can only speak to France, but a lot of their national health system is also forward in that it's preventative health care,
Yes.
right? It's not like get you sick and then treat your thing. It's like there's a lot of, when I was living there was enough noticeable campaigning for me from my American lens of like, oh, here's some labeling, here's a shelf where all this shit is, like there was a labeling system that was created. There were national, advertisements that I would see that were like, hey, this isn't good for you, this causes this thing. Or the government straight up just doesn't, like, you can't get Ritz or like Coffee Mate or like all this weird shit that we have here that's not even food, right? It's to prevent so you don't get sick. Like, let's try to
Right.
prevent you from getting sick. Where here it's like, let's just like the Wild West, just let it rip, and then we just treat your ailment when you're, half dead.
That's why, like, I never understand
Terrible.
why there's not an annual, like, let's just let's just take an annual test to test all the things, the blood tests and all that. And if something comes up and it rings a bell, let's look into it. It's always treated, but by the time you feel that bad, it could be so far gone, you know what I mean? And people will put off their health
Mm-hmm.
because they don't want to be stuck with a bill. They're stressed out already. And that's another thing, the stress of living here, or just in general, I'm not going to say just America, just the stress of the current times is making people sick. There's younger people getting sick. There's people getting cancer. You can't just put everything to wait till you're 40, wait till you're 50, wait till you're this or that, or like, that's not how this works. It's not just a one size fits all. And I don't understand why it's not more preventative here. Oh, that's right. The profits. Because it's about the profits.
Pharmaceutical company.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't forget,
Yeah.
got to make a profit.
Duh. What was I thinking?
Get crazy, Robin.
Yeah. Jeez. Only seems like a doable solution, but whatever. Whatever. And then that's another thing, talking about the pharmaceuticals of it all, they can peddle certain things, right, legally, and it leads to a huge crisis in this country. And things are
Mm-hmm.
demonized, like fentanyl, are demonized. Women, which they are extremely dangerous. Don't get me wrong. In other countries, it's everything is such a propaganda machine. It's actually insane. And you know how we see these drug commercials, and it'll be like, if you take this, it could lead to da 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 da. I mean, the laundry list is so freaking long, and I understand it's necessary to cover all the caveats, but it makes you pull back and be like, how bad do I need this? How bad do I need this? Because I don't want to sleepwalk. I don't want to there's some things where it's like you can like have homicidal actions or thoughts because you took a medicine. That's crazy. Like, what? I don't know. It's wild.
It is wild. I mean, medication has its place and some people need it, and we're not saying they don't, but to your point, there are 2.7 Americans who suffer from addiction to legal pain medications such as oxycodone. And I feel like when we see our government taking resources to go bomb boats and spending unbelievable amounts on that to prevent fentanyl from coming in here, rather than putting resources into helping Americans access quality health care and help them with that addiction, that tells you where are their priorities, really,
Yeah.
right? And I want to always make sure that we point out that all of this disproportionately affects non-white people, especially Black and Indigenous women. It's really all of these things, when you look into them and you look at the data, it really highlights the disparity both in gender and racism-based caste system that we have here. And also just the access to safe food, housing, water, air, all of this. So where goes one goes all. We're all living in this house together. And I would hope that people would just do things out of love and kindness. But even if you're just completely self-serving, there's a reason for you to want to help prevent this from happening to people. So for our listeners, what if? We do that a lot here, play the what if game. What if a livable wage was required to be paid so that a family of 4 could survive on one full-time income? It would reduce the amount of profit going into the pockets of the wealthiest. However, our country would still be just as wealthy. The funds would just be more fairly dispersed. And what if corporations were also held accountable for the cost of doing truly safe testing on products before releasing them into the environment or for purchase? And if they were held responsible for the full cleanup of any contamination they cause, including the health costs to those affected? How would that change our lives as Americans? How would that change our health? What would that mean for your family or people you love? So we've run out of time for today, but we'd like to pose this third question to our listeners regarding part 4 of this series. In addition to basic needs being affected, how do you feel about Americans' rights to freedom being cashed in for profit? Please think on how that affects you personally, and then join us for part 4 of this podcast series.
So if we can talk about facts over feelings, the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, no matter where you live, no matter where you're from, no matter who your parents are, who your children are, we all deserve certain things: love, housing, security, food, clean water. We deserve those resources as human beings. We are here for an experience together. And I think that we need to really lean into the fact of why are people being stripped of that? And why are we okay with it? Why is it being normalized? Why is it that people are looked down upon because they may need public assistance to get them through a rough time? Because, as it was said before, all it takes is one bad diagnosis, one layoff that could change the whole trajectory of your life. And in those moments, we all need help. And it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to lean into your community. But mostly for the federal government, that we pay taxes. That is what we come back for. We pay into you so that you can help us get back on our feet. Corporations use it sometimes when it seems they don't even need it. So when we think about that and we put that into perspective, I want you to think about and really, really focus on feeling how it feels to sleep in a warm bed. How does it feel to have a nice meal that you share with your family and your friends? How does it feel to know that when you wake up the next morning, you're going to have a place to call home? You're going to have a family to come to. Think about that. Really, really focus in on that. And remember that feeling, that fuzzy feeling, and that each and every one of us deserves that. Each and every one of us deserves to have security and safety. And I want you to go through your day as you meet other people and to try to look at them through that lens, as if that was your sister, your cousin, your grandmother. And maybe if we start looking at each other like that with a little more empathy, we could see a positive change in this world, because we're going to get way more with love than we do with hate. I want y'all to think about that. And when you come back, we'll expand on it. Anything else, ladies?
That was beautiful.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Robin. And thank
All
you,
right,
ladies.
well, yes.
Thank you.
Until next time. Bye.
See you later. Bye.